So recently, the Atlanta Hawks were just eliminated from the postseason by the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 6 of the Eastern Conference. And to be honest, this was a very surprising season from the Hawks because a lot of people going to the season had the Hawks as high as a 6th seed and as low as like a 9th or 8th seed or somewhere around there. And they started the year off terribly, but as soon as they signed a new head coach in Nate McMillan, they started doing fantastic. They went all the way up to the 5th seed. And in the postseason, many people were doubting them against the New York Knicks, but they ended up defeating them in a gentleman's sweep 5 games. Then in the second round, literally everyone was doubting them versus the Philadelphia 76ers, including me. Yet they defeated the Sixers in a close 7-game series. And then in the conference finals, they had to face the Milwaukee Bucks, and they put up a good fight, losing in 6 games. This was definitely a very impressive year from the Hawks, but now their season's to an end, and we have to look onto their offseason. I think this offseason, the Hawks have many moves to make. So in today's video, I'll be giving 5 things that the Atlanta Hawks need to do this offseason. But before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content because I post literally every single day. Also subscribe to my channel to help me reach my goal of 1,500 subscribers. Comment on this video to start a conversation with me as I do respond to all of my comments. Play that intro. First thing the Atlanta Hawks need to do this offseason is decide whether or not they're going to bring back John Collins. Because just in case you didn't know, Collins is a restricted free agent going into this offseason, meaning that no matter what contract he's offered, the Hawks can match it and bring him back, whether or not he wants to be brought back or not. For example, if the Pelicans offer him a 4-year $80 million deal, even though he agreed with the Pelicans for that deal, the Hawks can pay him the same exact amount of money for the same exact amount of years and bring him back to their team, or they could decide to not pay him the money and let him go to the Pelicans. And this is a pretty tricky situation since Collins is a player who I think will get a decent amount of money. I can see him getting anywhere from $15 to even $25 million a year, and that's a lot of money, especially on this Hawks team that has so much talented players that are either being paid a decent amount right now or players who are going to be paid decent amount in the future. And soon the Hawks will be giving Trae Young a max extension, which will definitely be deserved. But if they sign Collins to a big deal, it won't necessarily affect them extending Trae Young, but it can stop them from making certain moves and improving their roster. And in my opinion, I think if John Collins is offered a contract less than $25 million a year, you should definitely re-sign him because he's a player who I think helps this team. Because although his numbers fell off drastically in the postseason compared to the regular season, I still think he's a really good player who helps them out. And if he gets anything over $25 million a year, then I think you should just let him go. Because at the same time, even if they decide to bring him back on a contract where it's $25 million a year, I don't think it would even be that big of a deal since they have a guy like Danilo Gallinari who could slide in if Collins was ever to leave this team. But I should give some more credit to Collins because in the postseason, he showed he's a really good defender when he tries. I think that he makes this Atlanta team better, but at a certain point, if he's going to get overpaid, I think you should just let him walk because you don't want to stay stagnant and you want to have team flexibility in terms of money, and re-signing him could potentially hinder that. Also, he's not like a for sure all-star player. I think he can be an all-star, but he's not like 100% going to be an all-star in his career, so maybe you wouldn't offer him this contract. The second thing the Atlanta Hawks need to do this offseason, extend Kevin Huerter to a longer contract. Because this offseason, Huerter is eligible to get a longer extension, and in the postseason and just in his career as a whole, he's shown that he's a player good enough to get a solid extension. I think this extension should be somewhere around $12 to $16 million a year. Anything over that I think is a bit of an overpay, but he's a really solid player because he's a solid defender and he's an elite shooter who can even create his own shot at a decent level. He's also a young player, so he fits well with this team's timeline, and he's just really good role player. Not extending him would be a pretty big L because I think after seeing how good Huerter was doing in the postseason, I think there's a legitimate chance that Huerter could have a breakout season next season and play even better. So signing him now to his current worth might be a steal in the future. Whereas if he goes out and has a breakout season next season, I think there's a decent chance that he does, then he'll be off. Then you have to offer him more money, which obviously you would rather not do. And I just think signing Huerter is a really smart move because I think he's really important to this team. The third thing the Atlanta Hawks need to do this offseason, extend their superstar and franchise player in Trae Young to a max extension. And I don't think I really need to explain why they should do this, but I think I will. Trae is clearly this team's best player, and in my opinion, he's a top 6 point guard in the league. He probably would be a top 5 point guard if you didn't include James Harden or Luka Doncic as a point guard, but personally, I have them both as point guards, so he's not in my top 5. But don't get it wrong, Trae is a very good player. I doubted him a lot in this year's postseason, and I have to give an apology because I thought he would struggle against the Knicks defense if they had a top 5 defense in the league, but yet he absolutely torched them. Then I thought he would struggle against the 76ers because they had Ben Simmons, who's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. And although he didn't have his best series, he still played great and played at least good enough for them to win the series. And then against the Bucks, I learned my lesson and I didn't doubt him. And in the games he wasn't injured, he was pretty solid, as he had that 45-point game and he had a bunch of assists. Literally no one thought that the Hawks were going to get past the second round, and people would have called you crazy if you said they were in the conference finals a few months ago. But they made it that far, and it was probably their most successful season in the last decade, because technically, even though they made the conference finals in 2015, they ended up being swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers embarrassingly. But you have to realize that mainly all of this, not all of this, but most of it is because of Trae Young. So they're definitely going to give him as much money as he wants, or as much money as they can possibly give him. No arguments about that. I don't even think there's an argument for why you wouldn't give Trae any money. He's also a very young player, and he's going to be around for a long time, and he's not really injury prone. And I actually think this is one of the rare extensions where it's smart for both the team and the player, undoubtedly, because when like De'Aaron Fox got re-signed, like it's good for like the Kings for like re-signing him and stuff, but Fox is just wasting prime years of his career in Sacramento, so that's not good. But the Hawks are clearly building a solid team around them. They clearly know what they're doing. They're just a really smart organization, so I think Trae can have a long, fruitful, and successful career in Atlanta. The fourth thing I think the Atlanta Hawks need to do this offseason is extend their center in Clint Capela. Capela's coming off his best season where he led the whole NBA in rebounds, and he was the main reason the Hawks were not a below average defensive team, and he was one of the 10 most impactful defenders in the NBA due to his rim protection and things like that. He also is an amazing lob target, and he showed that he could actually fit well with John Collins. It may not be the perfect fit in the world, but it was a good enough fit to get them all the way to the conference finals. Clint definitely needs to get extended after that great season, and I believe if you take him off of this Atlanta team, they fall off significantly from where they are right now, which is an above average defensive team, and they fall all the way down to a bad defensive team. So they definitely have to re-sign him. He's arguably probably more important than John Collins, so if you're going to extend someone, you're going to not re-sign though, extend him. If you're going to extend someone, you definitely extend Capela instead of Collins, in my opinion, but you should try and do both. And I believe the Hawks will give him somewhere around a $16 to $22 million deal for the next few years, and I think he'll deserve that. The fifth thing the Atlanta Hawks need to do this offseason is re-sign Lou Williams. Williams probably had his worst season of his career this past season, but in the postseason at times he has really stepped up for this Atlanta team, and at this current moment this team does not have a really good starting point guard. Chris Dunn honestly might be one of the worst players in the NBA, whereas Lou Williams is one of the better bench players in the NBA, and he plays very similar to how Trae Young plays. Obviously he's not as good as Trae Young, but he kind of plays similar with his ability to play in the pick and roll, and his much improved ability to pass to open guys. And he's really good at floaters, and he can somewhat create his own shot at a pretty solid level, and he can shoot the ball at a good level, especially from mid-range. I think he's nearly the perfect backup point guard for this team. They obviously lose something when Trae Young's not on the court, but Lou can have big games and have big moments as he showed in the conference finals. So I think they should really re-sign Lou Williams because he can really help their team. I think they should offer him a contract worth like $6 to $10 million a year. If you haven't heard, Lou Williams has never made over $10 million in his career, and he probably won't start doing it at this point in his career when he just came off of one of his worst seasons. But to conclude the video, I don't think the Hawks need to make any big moves or signings yet because they are one of the best offensive teams in the NBA and they're pretty good at defense, especially after getting McMillan. And they have a good mixture of young players but also some veterans, and they have a really good coach, and they have some really good three-point shooters. The only thing I would say they're lacking is maybe a second legitimate all-star alongside Trae Young, and I would say they were like they need to get one of those guys like a Bradley Beal or anything if they had lost in the first round of the playoffs. But after all they have done without a second star, I don't think at this current moment they need one. Probably in the future they should probably look to get one, but at this current moment I think next season they don't need to like be in a rush to go trade for like Bradley Beal or something. I don't think this is a team that needs to make any major move because their team is very solid up and down. Anyways guys, that's it for the video. Let me know what you think the Hawks should do this offseason. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content and to reach my goal of 1,500 subscribers. Comment on this video to the conversation as I do respond to all of my comments. And play that intro.